Good morning. This is the time and place for the zoning cases hearing for January 22nd, 2014. My name is Bradley Collin, and I will be conducting the hearing as the hearing officer. We have 3 cases scheduled for today, and the relevant exhibits are located behind me on the panels. One of the 3 cases, which is the conditional use permit located at 241 North Central Avenue. Is there anybody in the audience that's here for that particular case? Okay, that case is being continued until March 5th per the applicant's request, and there will be no further noticing for that project. This is noticing of that. So we have 2 other cases on the agenda today. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of these green cards located at the front with your name and address and hand it to our planning assistant. I'd like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer hearing today are recorded on tape as part of the public record. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, and we have 2 conditional use permits applications today. A conditional use permit shall be granted if 4 of the required findings are present. They are, first, that the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. Second, that the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, general welfare, or the environment. Third, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And fourth, that adequate public and private facilities, including utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, traffic circulation measures are or will be provided for the proposed use. There are 5 additional findings that are specific to alcoholic beverages. Getting to that with our first application. In regards to findings, if the evidence presented in the application at the hearing meets the criteria that I just read through, the hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of facts are not evident, then the request will be denied. The hearing will proceed as follows. The case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward stating both name and address. Will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak. Again, clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments, if desired, in response to the testimonies given by the preceding speakers, and that'll be a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will then be closed, and the case taken under submission or decision may be made. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing, will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and email and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date of today's hearing. I'm going to take these cases out of order as listed on the agenda. So the first case that we will hear today will be for 3800 East Glen Oaks Boulevard. Can I have that presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Collin. The applicant is requesting an approval of a conditional use permit to allow the continued sales, service, and on-site consumption of beer and wine at an existing golf course with clubhouse and tennis facilities. According to city records, the golf course and clubhouse have been in operation since about 1979. The applicant, American Golf Corporation, has been operating the existing golf course with associated clubhouse and facilities since 1998. The existing clubhouse operates similar to a fast food restaurant, and based on the floor plan submitted, there will be no bar area on site. On February 28th, 1995, the zoning hearing officer granted conditional use permit case number 9351-CU with conditions to permit the continued service of beer and wine at an existing clubhouse. This CUP expired on February 28th, 1999, and the applicant is here today to renew this entitlement. No major concerns were received from various city divisions and departments for the existing restaurant to serve beer and wine. Suggested conditions made by the Glendale Police Department have been included in the draft conditions of approval to ensure that any potential negative impacts would be appropriately mitigated. The Community Service and Parks Department also had some comments related to the applicant's lease agreement with the City of Glendale and associated revenue agreements, and those are noted in the file. No other comments were received by members of the public. The project site is located along the most northern portion of East Glen Oaks Boulevard and is approximately 368 acres. The lot's developed with a one-story, 3,800 square foot clubhouse with a total of 157 parking spaces, and that includes 5 handicap stalls, and these are located to the west of the existing building. The project site also comprises of the golf course and 10 existing tennis courts. The existing clubhouse has a retail pro shop for patrons of the golf course and tennis facilities, as well as an indoor eating area that seats approximately 12 patrons and an outdoor eating area that seats approximately 15. Access to the property and parking is from East Glen Oaks Boulevard. The subject site is located in the eastern portion of Glen Oaks Canyon neighborhood and is secluded from the nearby hillside developments. The closest residential neighborhood is across the mountain, approximately half a mile away. The application does not include any added floor area or modifications to the existing building, uses, or business operations. Therefore, adequate utilities, landscaping, parking, and traffic circulation measures are already provided for. The project site is located within the recreation and open space land use element of the general plan, where recreational and open space uses along community collector streets like East Glen Oaks Boulevard are desired. The applicant's proposal for the continued sales, service, and on-site consumption of beer and wine at the existing clubhouse will be ancillary to the primary use and is consistent with the land use element and objectives of the general plan. No public facilities are located within the immediate area with the exception of the project site. The applicant's request for a CUP at this location will not be a detriment to the safety and public welfare of the neighborhood, since the service of beer and wine is generally viewed as a common extension. According to the Glendale Police Department, Shoal Canyon Golf Course is located in Census Tract 3009.02, where the suggested limit for the census tract is 1 for on-sale establishments. The golf course is the only active on-sale license in the census tract. Based on Part 1 crime statistics, there were 7 crimes reported in this tract in the last calendar year, which is 88% below the citywide average of 60. Within the last calendar year, there were 5 calls for police service at this location. 4 of these calls for service were for the burglar alarm being set off, and 1 was for a suspicious juvenile, but no report was ever taken. The proposed CUP request is not anticipated to result in any negative impacts to the residents in the neighborhood. The use has existed for many years and has not proved to be detrimental to surrounding uses. The suggested conditions for this CUP would serve to mitigate any potential negative impacts in the surrounding neighborhood, and staff believes that all of the findings for this CUP can be made in a positive manner and therefore recommends approval of this entitlement. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Zadi. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. I have 1 speaker card for Jenny Malhout. Please come forward, stating your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Jenny Mayo. My address is 3250 Oakhurst Avenue, Los Angeles, California. And I'm the environmental consultant with First Carbon Solutions for the applicant. And The applicant is American Golf Corporation, and the project is requesting a conditional use permit for the continued on-site sale, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for the Shoal Canyon Golf Course. As Vista has mentioned, the facilities itself will remain the same. There are no changes to the tennis courts, the golf course, the clubhouse, or the parking. All that will remain the same. The proposed use will be consistent with the various elements and objectives in the elements in the general plan. The project is also found not to be detrimental in any way to the health, safety, or environment within the area, and it is consistent with the surrounding uses. And as Vista mentioned, the closest sensitive receptor is about 0.5 miles from the actual project site. So it's basically consistent with the area. There are no changes to the land use, utilities, landscaping, or parking, and there's adequate traffic since the existing uses will not be changing. And we agree with the conditions of approval per the conditional use permit that the city is implementing.
I did have one question for you,
Yes.
or a clarification, I guess. The hours of operation, is that 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
Yes, correct. That's 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
And that's for the entire facility or just for the clubhouse?
The entire facility is open,
And that's Monday through Sunday through...
Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week.
Okay, so if we added that into the conditions of approval, I'm not sure if it's there, I don't think it is. That would be fine.
Yes, as long as it's those
Just
hours
to kind
that
of
were.
clarify what our hours are for what's out there.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this particular item? I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I think that all the finding... I haven't got there yet, so you're welcome. I'll take your slip. You give it to... I think the findings can be made for the conditional use permit in question for Shoal Canyon, and with the added condition or clarification to add the hours of operation Monday through Sunday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., I'm going to go ahead and approve the conditional use permit with the conditions. Thank you very much. Our next case on the agenda is going to be 2512 East Chevy Chase Drive. And may have a staff report, please.
Yes, this is a proposed 4,143 square foot, two-story, single-family residence with an attached three-car garage on a 1.86 acre site. Because the property has an average slope of more than 50% and they're proposing to grade more than 1,500 cubic yards, the applicant has applied for a conditional use permit. Environmental review was performed for the project. A proposed mitigated negative declaration has been circulated for comments, and there's a resolution for your consideration in the file to certify that or to approve that document should you choose to. The project site is vacant, irregularly shaped, with frontage on both Chevy Chase and Laird Drives. I'll come up to the board and point out some details. The project site is this nearly 2-acre property that fronts on both Chevy Chase and on Laird Drive to the west. The site is hilly and has terrain rising towards the south. Most of the development of the site will be contained sort of in the northerly and the central part of the site. The upper areas of the site will remain undeveloped. There's an existing cut for a driveway or road that crosses the site. The project is utilizing that existing graded path or road for their driveway, which minimizes the amount of grading that they're proposing to do. There will be a retaining wall system required in various portions of this driveway mostly down towards the Chevy Chase side of the property, where it gets steep going down as it connects to the road. And the retaining walls for the road are shown in this area on the plans. There's also a series of retaining walls behind the house and behind the proposed guest house, which is a 500 square foot detached structure. The retaining walls for those are a maximum of 5 feet high. Most of the property, as I said, will remain unimproved. Some of the natural vegetation will remain on the upper portions of the site. The area around the house will receive new planting and a thinning of the existing landscaping and some new landscaping around the house. Here, for your consideration, are some photographs of neighboring properties in the vicinity.
Thank you.
And these photographs document views itself. It's the house is essentially a 3-story structure, only in sort of in section view. Most of the house actually functions as a 2-story structure. This part here of the house does not sit on this part. This extends separately, so this is a two-story structure. This is a 2-story structure. It only looks like 3 stories, but it doesn't stack on top of itself to become 3 stories. At the ground level, at the lowest level, we just have the garage and some mechanical equipment. Then you rise up to the middle level, the main level of the house, where we have the kitchen, a great room, and a guest room. Then at the upper levels, we have the various bedrooms, and then the pool and patio deck behind. There's also a small sort of pool house that's attached. It's really not just a pool house because it's attached to the house. It's a little room that will be a changing room, and then there's an exterior barbecue back here in the backyard area. The house is basically Spanish style, which is fairly common in the neighborhood. The topography is shown on these 2 sheets. The sheet submitted by the applicant shows 5-foot topographic lines, and the sheet I've prepared shows 2-foot. They have produced a slope calculation using 2-foot intervals to demonstrate that it's roughly 56% for the average current slope. This view of the plan here shows a section through the hill to show roughly where the house is in relation to the hill and in relation to one of the adjacent houses downslope. And as you can see, the house is well below the highest point of the property. There are coast live oaks and sycamores along essentially the northerly property line and along the driveway area. As I'll get to it later, but all of these trees are being preserved with the exception of one. One will be removed as a result of the latest alignment of the driveway. As I mentioned, the area around the property is already developed with existing single-family homes in a variety of styles. The area to the south of this, or upslope, is zoned SR, it's vacant, and it's city-owned, and is unlikely ever to be developed. Public Works has essentially given standard comments for hillside developments, asking that the contours be rounded and retaining walls be created to allow for proper drainage. Traffic engineering required that the driveway be reconfigured to provide proper exiting out to Chevy Chase Drive, and the plans reflect this. The residence will be located near the central part of the site, approximately 130 feet from the street front property line along Chevy Chase Drive. It will be a similar distance from Laird Drive. The proposed guest house, detached guest house, will be approximately 60 feet from the street front property line along Chevy Chase Drive. The main residence will be located in the lower elevations of the site, built into the natural slope in an area of the topography where there's a sort of a flatter area, kind of a little drainage, a little hollow. Building it into this location allows them, again, to minimize the amount of grading that they have to do. over 70% of the site will remain ungraded open space. An arborist prepared an analysis of the site, and this has been reviewed by our tree specialist in Public Works. And as I noted, of the 19 oak trees and 2 protected California sycamores on the site, all but 1 are being maintained. The arborist prepared a series of mitigation measures, which is incorporated into the initial study. The applicant has indicated agreement with these mitigation measures. The arborist and our specialist both agree that with these mitigation measures, the impacts to the indigenous trees have been fully mitigated. There are no significant unmitigated impacts to biological resources. The safety element identifies portions of the site as being in a landslide hazard zone. A soils report was prepared by an engineering company, and a geotechnical report also prepared by the applicant. Both these reports show that using proper construction techniques, the site can be safely developed. Of the 1,500 total cubic yards of grading, there will be about 500 cubic yards removed from the site, exported from the site as a result of the work. It's worth noting that some existing homes in the neighborhood were constructed on manufactured pads, which is a construction method that the city discourages in hillside areas. This follows that pattern to a certain extent, but they have minimized it to a great extent by utilizing this hollow in the area, and because of the design of the house, the style of the house, it also, they're not proposing a house that's appropriate for a flatland development. They're proposing a hillside style house, which helps minimize the amount of grading. As I pointed out, on the cross section, the hill generally rises much higher behind the house, anywhere between 25 and 75 feet higher than the house itself, which allows the house to give the appearance of being set into the hillside. Although the upper floor is not set back from the lower floor, which is generally something we like to see for hillside houses, the need for such a design is reduced because there are no other houses east or west across on the same sort of slope or elevation as the house that would have a view of the house. So the only reason to step back the upper floor really is to reduce the apparent massing of the house. Given the restricted views of the house, you can only really, the only place you'll really be able to see the house is from across the canyon to the north on Cascadia, which is at or above the elevation of the house. The reason they would have a view of it, but is then you'll be high enough to look over the oak trees that will generally screen the house from most anybody else. Given that those limited views of the house, the need to reduce the apparent massing by stepping back the upper story, in staff's opinion, is just reduced, and it's not a significant deviation from the guidelines. The project will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of the surrounding property because most of the surrounding property has already been developed, most of the privately owned property has been developed, and the substantial amount of the hillside is already in public ownership by the city. The property is fully served by public utilities, and there is and the existing utilities are adequate to serve the property. The site planning of the project, again, minimizes the on-site grading. It minimizes the disruption to the natural topography, to the existing landscaping, and is consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines recommend that the retaining walls used on a hillside property should not be a dominant physical feature. Many hillside homes we see propose 10 or 15 foot high retaining walls. This project proposes a maximum height of 5 foot for the retaining walls. And given the topography and the size of the house and the shape of the house, the retaining walls will generally be screened from view by the house itself or by the guest house or by the existing oak trees. The retaining walls will not be a dominant view imposed on the hillside. The house also follows the topography by incorporating an angle where it changes direction from the garage orientation to the main portion of the house. Following the topography here also helps the house conform to the hillside and minimizes the grading. The proposed landscape plan includes drought-tolerant and California native species, as the guidelines recommend. The house is proposed to be approximately 35 feet high, which is allowed in the code, which is the maximum allowed in the code. And the neighborhood consists of 1- and 2-story houses. As I've noted, given the topography, given the existing stand of mature oak trees that are separate the house from the street and from the neighboring houses to the north, and given the configuration sort of the canyon, very few people will be able to have views of the house. Occasionally you'll be able to see it driving up and down Chevy Chase in brief glimpses, but primarily the only people that will really be able to see the house in staff's opinion are the immediate neighbors downslope and then the neighbors across the canyon upslope on Cascadia, off of Cascadia. There are no protected scenic vistas obscured by the proposed development. There are no blue line streams, and the project is not in a primary or secondary ridge line. That completes my presentation. Again, I would note that there's a resolution for your signature regarding the environmental analysis, and I stand ready for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. The first speaker card I have is for Raymond Monroe. Please come up, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Raymond Monroe, and I'm the trustee for the Chevy Chase Trust. And I was put in charge of investigation before acquiring the land. And during that investigation, I met with several members of the planning staff. I met, because of oak trees on the property, I met with Anne Mary Sheet and discussed the possibility of doing a project on that site. And I also met with the engineering department and also hired several consultants, soil engineer, geologists, arborists, to do all the investigation. Based on their finding, they recommended that the land could be developed. We acquired the land, and after acquiring the land, we gathered a group of consultants to help us in the process of developing the plans and everything else. And the engineer, the architect, arborist, landscape architect to work on the project were hired, and they are fully professional and people, and we come up and had several meetings during the process with planning, and I attended some of the meetings and make sure we follow all the guidelines of the hillside ordinance and everything else, and we're able to come up with this project because the project site is over 80,000 square feet. The slope is over 50%, to be exact 56%, which triggers the conditional use permit, and that's why we are here today. The house is about 4,100 square feet, will be a 3-car garage, and a guest house of 500 square feet. It will be a Spanish design with wet tile roof, 2-story high. Grading, because of the hillside ordinance, we are limited to amount of grading. The house is placed in the flattest portion of the lot, in the middle of the lot, to follow the ground contour. The lower level will be talking to the hill to avoid much grading. 1,500 cubic yard of grading is proposed, 1,000 cubic yard of cut, and 5 cubic yard of fill. Therefore, limit the exportation of dirt to 500 cubic yard. Drainage. There will be sufficient drainage for the proposed project. Based on the hydrology report, the drainage plan was prepared. Protected trees, there are about 22 protected trees on or within 20 feet from the site, 20 oak trees and 2 sycamore trees, which are within 20 feet from the boundary of the property. One tree is a cedar tree and on Chevy Chase, and the other is on the right side of the property. All trees will be protected during construction, except one oak tree will be cut, and mitigation is in place to replace the tree. the landscape plan conform with fire regulation. There will be some toyon, some oaks, and plant native to the area. The rest of the property will remain untouched. Utilities, public and private utilities have been in place in the area and will be available for the proposed residents. Glendale Water and Power met with me on the site and seen no problem and gave us a proposal to bring the utilities into the site. Safety, the fire department has made the recommendation and are very happy of the configuration of the driveway. Aesthetic, driving up and down Chevy Chase, you wouldn't hardly see the house, the neighborhood below. The neighbor below, when look up, will only see the facade of the house. And all in all, the project is, when completed, the neighbors should be happy to have such a house in the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next, I have Paul Firestone.
Mr. Chairman, could I be reserved to speak last?
During the rebuttal portion or at the end of...
Everyone else had their say.
What will happen is, usually I go through the applicants and then everyone else that's interested in speaking, and then those, or the applicant will have an opportunity at the end to provide any sort of rebuttal. Is that what you're waiting for? Is it possible?
That's what I like to be.
That's fine. Okay, next I have Brian Duran. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Brian Duran. I live at 2900 Graceland Way in Glendale. I'm also the co-president of the Chevy Chase Estates Association, and today I'm representing the board of directors of that group. Excuse me. We're reacting to local residents who have had concerns about this project. We've investigated ourselves and have gone down there and conferred with the local residents. We've walked the property to see what those concerns are, and we've concluded that there are a couple of concerns that the CCA would like to bring to your attention. The first concern that we have has to do with the drainage problem that was already referred to in the staff report. We believe that the drainage problem there is more than a minor problem based on the history that has been given by some of the local residents as to flooding that has happened when there has been heavy runoff. Even when there is light rain, there is a certain amount of runoff. Since the owner has performed a certain amount of grading to gain better access to that site, the runoff has increased to the point where even a light rain will result in a lot of mud and debris coming down from the site onto Laird Drive. We believe that if this property is developed as planned, the driveway, a large expansive driveway, and all of the removal of the native brush and foliage that was there before will be an exacerbation of the problem that already existed and result in a problem for the nearby residents in flooding, etc. They may mention to you the scope of this flooding was such that it could wash a car down Laird Drive to Chevy Chase Drive, so this is not a trivial matter. So we believe that the Public Works Advisory to rework the drains should be a condition for approval. Also, we'd like to comment on the aesthetics of this project. The size and the location of the house we believe is problematic. It's too visible on the hillside. It's a very large house. It's over twice as large as surrounding houses. The 10 surrounding houses average out at 1,942 square feet. This one is much larger, and we don't think it fits the character of the neighborhood. We also don't think that it's healthy to set a precedent in the hillside with a driveway that surrounds an existing house. There will be a driveway above an existing house, also a house looking down onto existing houses. There's a precedent for this recently in 1410 Colina, which was a similar plan, which was approved by the DRB but rejected by City Council because of the structure above existing houses. We also question that the driveway that goes down to Chevy Chase does not seem to be usable and does seem to go beyond the 20% limit for the driveways. And lastly, we'd like to request that the house would be more likely located at the street level at Laird Drive, and then it would fit more into the character of the neighborhood, which is consistent with Chapter 301140A, which means the project should be more compatible with surrounding neighborhood characteristics, ray bulk and mass, and site layout. Thank you for your consideration.
Quick
Any
question
questions?
for you. Yeah.
Yes.
If the house hypothetically were moved closer or down toward Laird, would there then be concerns with the house in terms of light and glare being impacts on the surrounding neighbors, or is that not an issue?
I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next one I have is for Virginia Moreno.
Thank you.
Morning.
My name is Virginia Moreno, and I live at 2480 East Chevy Chase, and that's right at the corner of Laird. And I actually am very much against this project because when we had the last big rains, it was some years ago, the Laird, Laird goes into the meadow, and at the meadow, it's a main drainage point in the canyon. Your engineers told us that. And when I talk about a flood, we had tree trunks and boulders, and the city had caterpillars out there, and the whole was not a small flood; it was a major flood. My car washed out into Chevy Chase, and your engineers came out and told us if this property was ever developed, they would have to have a turnaround, and then pipes would have to be laid because it's a main drain. And so I'm just so surprised when I read this, and it doesn't say that the drainage is not a problem. It is really a problem. Even now, when there's a light rain, the drains are not adequate. And then before Mr. Mundo went ahead and graded the whole meadow. We don't have a meadow anymore. It's been flattened. It's just dirt. So now even a small rain, all the mud washes down. Even a wind, all the mud washes down. And when we complained because he brought a caterpillar up there and he didn't have a permit, and we were told that he hadn't moved that much dirt, but he flattened the whole thing and then he put in a road. And also, when the flood came, it actually washed a huge gully in the meadow all the way down. I could stand in it and it was like to here. That's how deep it was. It's just filled in naturally. No one ever filled it in. It just filled in by itself. So that whole area has to be very unstable since it's just settled dirt. And also with these rains, part of the hill where they're proposing to build, I was standing there and I saw it. It just collapsed. So I don't know how actually stable it is. So that's one issue. The other issue is the other driveway that's going to be on, because it's layered and it's a horseshoe, and then the other driveway goes off on Chevy Chase. It's very steep, and also it comes off right at a gully at the top. That's got to have major flooding, and it's going to go right into the house across the street. It's going to go right down the street. So that's another issue. Also, I mean, really and truly, just with his grading, the amount of dust, I mean, it was almost unbearable. I have allergies, and it took me weeks to get over it. And also, because of the fact that the way it is, it's on a hill, and then there's like that little valley on Laird, it's an echo. So any kind of noise is really a problem. It echoes through the whole area in there. So with them building, it's going to have to I can't imagine how miserable we're going to be.
You're talking about the noise that's specific to construction, not
Yes.
if a house was already
Even
there.
the amount of small work that's been done now, okay? which we don't have a meadow anymore. It's just dirt. Everything's been plowed under, okay? Even that, and then the small thing that he put up there with all the hammering and everything, the noise is unbelievable. Also, it was been mentioned that that's a much bigger house than any of the rest of us have. So again, I want to thank you for your consideration, and just to let you know that as a neighbor, I'm very concerned and very much against the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have Darren Rohan.
Yeah, hello. My name is Darren Rohan. I live at 2500 East Chevy Chase Drive. And the reason I'm here is that I'm very much against this project. My family and I are very upset because of this development. The reason being, first of all, the driveway, it's right behind my backyard. I mean, it happens that if you want to take, I have some pictures, whenever he's driving behind this, on that driveway, it's looking right into my backyard. And he's done so much work. There was no driveway, like it's been said before here. There was just a passway. What this applicant did, one weekend, he came with a bulldozer, he moved the dirt, and he's moving the dirt on a side someplace, and you are saying lots of cubic feet of dirt is there. I mean, that he moved. He enlarged that to maybe about 8 to 10 feet wide drive. Now, he's driving there every single day now because he has nothing. He's a retirement, he's told me. And so he wants to build this house. It's very, it's going to be unbelievable to live in, to be outside in my backyard with this traffic that is created there right behind my house. And I hope that this house is going to move to a different location than being where it is right now, to not to have this driveway that he actually built it himself without permits, without anything. No city inspectors went there to see what he was doing. And even when I talked to him, I said, how could you do something like this? He said, you know what, I do whatever I want to do because it's my property. I said, yeah, but do you have a permit? I said, you know what, I don't have to have a permit. And I said, well, I'm going to, call the city. I don't care. City is too busy. It's short on staff. They're not going to come and look and count how many cubic feet of dirt I moved. And this is his actually his attitude. And just so, to clarify this, he leased the house right across the street, lease option to buy. And all of a sudden he's doing illegal work there, and he's been, filed paper by the Los Angeles County, and he was kicked out from the house because he was doing illegal work. He may continue to do the same thing. Now this area is such a narrow area there. Now the trucks, if there is no exit to Chevy Chase Drive, directly. I mean, where will those trucks turn around? Into our backyard? End up with the trucks in our swimming pool or in the house? There is no area where you can reach there. So there are so many other things that, this project shouldn't go on where the house is right now. And in conclusion, just so you know, even though may not have anything to do with the project, I mean, this man didn't even pay his property taxes. He has a balloon payment due in March, and we are going to end up with a project, if this is going to be approved, maybe just start developing, and then we are going to be looking at a lot there with an unfinished project for years. Who knows what this man's intentions are. So please take that in consideration. And with the privacy, this is a very, very big issue. This guy, he's even today, every single day, he's stopping right on top, and he's looking. He even tried to talk to some of my friends. We are sitting around and, at the table. He's just parking right on top where the driveway is, and he's just, we have no more privacy.
Is this the property owner that's driving up there, or
Yes,
the,
he's
a
the
contractor
private,
or architect?
Yeah, he's
or-
the gentleman right under. He's the one. Actually, yeah, it's I don't know what's going on there because they transferred this property a couple of times since he bought the property from BFA, from Bank of America. He transferred it to one, I don't know, a lady. Then the lady transferred it back to him. Then he went back and forth, and I don't know what the deal is there with all this kind of stuff. But I don't trust this. This is not a developer that doesn't even show that has the financial, power to build a house. And he even mentioned to me in the very beginning, I'm going to build it, with my guys. I'm going to get some laborers because I'm a retired man and, I have nothing else to do and I want to build this house. Of course, you want to, it's okay to make a profit, but not on the expense of our neighborhood. And the flood that we had there in January of 2008, we had flood. And I can tell you, I went with my rubber boots in there to take the trash cans from Chevy Chase because they went all the way down to Chevy Chase. The cars were moved, and I couldn't imagine because to move there we had so much mud there. I got mud into my swimming pool. My neighbor got water in her basement and in her garage and all that. And I would advise if anyone from the city who can see this project, in a fair way, to stop by and just to see the situation what we have there. It's just terrible. This project is terrible, and it's just an expense of our neighbors, and and especially for me, to take away my own privacy and all that. That's ridiculous. And the way the gentleman is speaking that he spoke to people before closing this deal, it is not true. This was a foreclosure through Bank of America. He just bought it for $110,000, and he said, I pay $110, I don't care, I can build it on my own because I have nothing else to do. So it comes in reality that this man doesn't care about the neighbors. He wants to make a buck, but, not on our expense. I think that would be wrong, and please take that in consideration.
Okay, one quick question, if I may.
Yes.
What they're showing on the plans is the house, not considering the oak trees that are in between your property and the subject property. It looks like there's approximately about 70 feet or so distance between your rear property line and the house. Hypothetically, if the house were built lower, like one of the other gentlemen mentioned, you could potentially be 10 feet away from your property line, again, not considering the oak trees that are there now, which would keep it further away. But if the house was built hypothetically lower, it could be potentially 10 feet rather than 71.
That won't be possible unless you give him a permit to cut all those oak trees.
Of course.
But if the house is going to be built lower, of course, it's not going to be it's not going to be close to us. It's going to be where the flat area, where he flattened the area. Actually, it will be in this area of the lot where it's not going to be visible and it's not going to be impacted by my house or my neighbor's house.
If you're standing in your backyard looking up toward the property, can you see the story poles, or do the oak trees that are there block that?
No, I can see through. I can see through. If you see.
This is a view from your pool?
Yes, from the pool side, it's right here. The house is going to be all in this area here. This is his driveway here, and all the way here. And the house, it's right in this area.
Okay.
Totally visible from my area also.
Okay, hold on. We can't have.
I'm sorry.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker I have is Art Simonian.
Good morning, Mr. Collin, Mr. Hamilton, staff. I'm Art Simonian. I live at 2632 Kennington. I live directly across the canyon from this project. And as you know, I'm a licensed architect. I spent considerable amount of time studying our city's design hillside guidelines, etc. I'm also a resident of the canyon and keenly aware of the context within which homes are placed in. And I must say this is probably the first time I've ever taken the time to come and object to a project, because that's how strongly I feel about it. I've visited the site. I've met with Mr. Hamilton. I've studied the site plan. I've studied the topography of the site. I've visited the site itself. I've studied the survey. And this proposed house is very massive in nature. It's twice the size of the average of the surrounding area. But most importantly, it's absolutely placed at the worst possible spot that it could be on the site, and that is why I'm here today. It's going to have a very difficult time going through the city, in my opinion. And I'd like to kind of elaborate, and I'm going to disagree with Mr. Hamilton on several points. And again, this is the first time I've come in and strongly disagreed on a point. That's how passionate I am about this. It's located about, give or take, 80 feet, whether it's 70 or 90, whatever it is, above Chevy Chase Canyon. And that is very different than the surrounding context and the surrounding nature of the area where all the homes are placed along Chevy Chase. As the home is pushed up onto the hill, it becomes visible from all angles of the canyon. And this is where I disagree. It is very much visible from Kennington, not just Cascadia. It's very visible from Cascadia. It's very visible from St. Andrews. And it's absolutely visible from that entire community that was built in the late 80s, which is above us. That's the thing about the canyon. It's a fishbowl. So it's, as you move up, your perspective totally changes. So I very much disagree with that. And I think you've probably gone up there and seen it, and it's hugely visible. It overlooks the backyards of the existing homes, and we had a very similar case come through the Design Review Board, and it got rejected by council, where it was a home that was overlooking the backyards of existing homes, which was on Kalina, as was originally stated. And these existing homes were perpendicular, let's say, to this site. And so the home was looking onto it. Very similar scenario. Since the home is pushed up on the hillside, it creates massive retaining walls in order to locate it. If I could drive your attention to that center section that has the red stamp at the bottom right, which says November 20th, you could see the retaining walls above it, and not only is the house visible from around the canyon, but those walls become hugely visible because, and I'm talking about the top right one, Mr. Collin, the one above the 2512 Chevy Chase sign that's pinned up, correct? You could see the retaining walls above it. Those retaining walls become much more prevalent when you're looking at it from above. And when I'm saying above, I'm saying several hundred feet from above, from Cannington, Cascadia, St. Andrews, and the other communities up there. The proposed location fights with nature and requires massive amounts of grading because of its location. Last but not least, it absolutely sets a bad precedent for homes being pushed up. This home has frontage along the cul-de-sac. It has frontage along Chevy Chase. Now, it makes sense for the applicant to push it way up on the hill because he plans to sell it. He also has a buyer in mind that he's promised a certain home to. Well, of course, they're looking to basically have this home with views out. We get that. At the same time, the canyon is all about compromises, and that's what we need to address. There needs to be some compromises, and I think the house could be relocated. And if it's relocated, a lot of the facts that I've indicated will be minimized. And this is what I mean. If it's moved down along Chevy Chase, which will be up closer to the Country Club Chevy Chase, or along the cul-de-sac, it'll be in line with the surrounding context. It will eliminate the long driveway, which, by the way, I witnessed in the weekends being graded on its own with a bulldozer. I've also witnessed him completely devegetating that entire hill, and put up sandbags, which also exasperates the flooding that they're talking about. But if it's relocated, it will not be looking onto their backyards. It will dramatically reduce the amount of grading. Now, will the house get smaller? Absolutely. But again, it's twice the size of the average anyway, so it should get smaller. And it will nestle into the hillside, thereby making it much less visible from the surrounding community. And I urge you, Mr. Collin, please go up in Cannington, Cascadia, St. Andrews, and the communities above it. You could absolutely see it. By moving the house, the applicant will have his house. He'll get his opportunity to deliver a house to his buyer, which is, I'm all for development. I'm a pro-development guy. But it will not set a bad precedent. As this house will get approved, we are in a transition point where we're getting away from these kind of hearings where the Design Review Board is now looking at things holistically. And we need to be very mindful of it. I suggest that this CUP is denied. I suggest that they do a whole bunch of additional studies, relocating the house in various areas that will eliminate the negative aspects that I spoke of. Not every property in the hillside is developable. Just because it is a huge 80,000 square foot parcel, as you could see, most of it is hillside, but it's 56% slope, so there are flat areas. And it should be relocated, the house should get smaller. The detached house is just an incredible precedent which doesn't exist, that detached guest house. And also, when we're looking at the design guidelines, this is a home that should be plopped in the middle of suburbia on a very big, flat, 5-acre lot. It does not belong in the hillsides, and it has no hillside design guideline characteristics. So again, I disagree on that comment as well. So with that, I'm available for comments and questions, Mr. Collin, and I very much appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much. Before I get to the applicant's rebuttal, I'd like to call up Mr. Chris Chu from Public Works.
Chris Chu with Public Works Engineering.
A question that I had, in terms of the drainage and the flooding that was mentioned, can mitigation measures or conditions be put in place that would mitigate the concerns that are being mentioned?
For the site itself, part of the review requires them to mitigate what is coming up from the site. But as far as the flooding concern that the neighbor has, if we look at the topographic of the area, and the major flow of the runoff does not go through the applicant's site. It actually goes through the neighbor's property, which is called Lot 20. And I have a map here for you to see.
Yeah, I can put it.
I think it's upside down. Right? Okay, the applicant's site is highlighted in yellow, as you can see on the bigger lot, and the pink area is at the end of that, where the runoff comes down from the hillside, the open space above Chevy Chase. And basically, if there's any control of the runoff, it has to be built in the area that is highlighted in pink, which is outside the applicant's site. So we can't find a nexus to have him improve an offsite area which is not impacted by the development on the lower and the bottom of the hillside. That's how we come up with that conclusion. Any question?
So then the applicant would be required to
mitigate all the runoff from the site.
this site onto the right-of-way.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
Now, the applicant has opportunity to come up and rebut if they would like.
The last, Paul Firestone, owner's Sherman Oaks, California, 91403. I actually have very little to add. I think Jeff gave an excellent presentation about the plan itself. We spent a lot of time citing everything, locating everything, and we felt that we took the best advantage of the lot that you could possibly have. Now, we were aware from day one on the fact that there was a major drainage problem on this lot. And as a result, we made sure that we engaged the services of a hydrologist, copy in my hand, who is going to fully analyze this lot in addition to what he's done already, and will make sure that all the drainage is headed in the proper direction so that eventually it'll wind up in the city's drainage system. I think that this can be handled in such a way that the problems that exist now will actually be eliminated, because we will take all the necessary measures to take the stormwater to the proper places for disposal. As far as the size of the house goes, this house is less than 5% of the area of the lot, whereas some of the other houses in the area go as high as 43, 44%. I mean, this is quite important. This is a little tiny speck on a large piece of land. So I don't see how it can be any objection to the size of it, being that the lot is so large. The road will be a 20% slope, which is allowed by the city. And I'd just like to point out that it was there when the owner bought the lot. And all we are doing to it is we're improving it and making sure that it works properly. Incidentally, the fire department is very happy about that road. They feel this will give them a great way to be able to get around everywhere. And on that same subject, their comment was that they are going to increase, or they're going to require the increase in the size of the firefighting equipment, the lines leading to it. Construction noise and so forth is temporary, and once everything is done, things will quiet down. So I don't see how that can be a problem. And that's probably all I have to say.
Did you look at other sightings or possible sightings on the property? And if so, why did you decide on this location?
Because it has a natural spot which just accept the house to where it is. It's the flattest spot of the whole property. It's at a place where it's about equal from both sides, from both street frontages, and it just naturally fits that place. If we put it anywhere else, it'd be on a steep hillside, and we would have to do other mitigating measures, which would be quite a lot more and worse than what we have now.
And then the retaining walls that are being proposed behind the house and the guest house, will those be visible from the street, or will the house block the view of that?
I don't see how they could be visible. The house blocks the retaining walls. It's actually not one retaining wall, but two. So that as you, behind the house, you will have one 5-foot retaining wall, and then after that, you go up a slope and you will have a second retaining wall. So that very little of it, if any, could be visible from anywhere.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Women Monroe, can I speak again? I want to rebuttal some of the words and things that were said concerning me and concerning my finance and other situation, which I feel that was not part of this meeting. That people coming and saying things like, I don't have money, I'm going to leave the project like that. It's not true, and the people part of the trust is going to be living in the house. Okay, yeah, the question of the finance, we don't have enough money, all that, I want to rebuttal against that. Okay, the fact that about drainage and everything is all drainage that's been existing is outside of the scope of this project. That's all irrelevant. Everything is blowing smoke. One man said a lot of things he should never say. And I think that some of these things will be taken care of outside of this.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to take this case under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing, will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and all person who has responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date the letter goes out. Terms of appeals under the appeal provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code. The decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures of the procedures from Building and Safety Section, Permit Service Center, which is located across the hall in this building. And hearing is now officially closed. I'd like to thank everybody for providing their testimony and showing up to the meeting. And it is 10:38 on January 22nd. Thank you very much.